Good evening, Bahamas. Coming up tonight on our news. The Prime Minister likens the country's crime problem to the Wild Wild West. The Commissioner calls for a bail crackdown after Nassau's murder spree.
An early morning murder caps off a weekend of bloodshed. That story coming up on our news.
Several men were brought before the magistrate's court today to answer to charges ranging from murder, rape, and human trafficking. That story is coming up straight ahead.
The one and only Ocean Club reopens. Welcome to our news and thanks for joining us. I'm Christina McNeil. Topping news tonight, in response to what he described as an insane situation, Prime Minister Perry Christie called for a massive police presence on the streets of New Providence to get a handle on crime. Christie, who was asked to comment on the 7 murders reported since Friday, said this dire situation may also require redeploying Defense Force officers to assist in crime-fighting efforts. Vonique Toot reports.
Prime Minister Christie expressed shock over the weekend murders, which were capped off today with even more bloodshed. He likened the situation to the Wild Wild West.
We are not going to be able to accept or countenance this kind of conduct and behavior from those who are committing it. It is insane. It is reminiscent of the Wild West. And it is something that we must get under control as quickly as possible.
7 people, including a 15-year-old boy, have been murdered over the past 4 days. The bloodshed continued in New Providence today with shooting and stabbing incidents. Christie called it a shocking development in the country that requires immediate action. When asked if the Progressive Liberal Party intends to unveil a new crime plan ahead of the upcoming general election, the Prime Minister said a massive police presence on the streets is needed to tackle what he called senseless retaliation killings.
Whatever crime plan we have, it has to be based on dedicating a substantial number of officers to the streets and giving them the capacity to interdict the movements of people on the streets. You have to have a massive presence on the streets. And to the extent that that is necessary, it means incorporating more reserve police officers. It means, if necessary, incorporating the Defense Force in complementary ways. But it means dedicating all that is necessary to bring this madness to a halt.
Christie called the recent spate of murders insane, asserting it requires an effort on the part of the entire country because we are all in this together.
When you ask about a crime plan, we all know that you cannot control the mind of someone who's intent on killing or who's being induced to do so through their association with gangs. But we are able to know that they have to go from point to point, and we have to dedicate the resources immediately, right, day and night.
Though he said he would need to speak with the Commissioner of Police, who held a news conference today, the Prime Minister said the latest killings may be gang-related.
This madness has to do with gangs and retaliation. And where in retaliation you're guessing who you should kill in response to who was killed. All right? There's no science to it, and you don't care who are present when you're doing it. There must be a major response to this. There must be a continuous response to it, and it has to be on flooding the streets with officers and equipment.
Christie says, like the rest of the country, he too is concerned about the wave of violent crime.
I'm concerned about it as a parent. So I know every parent would be concerned about it. There's something seriously going on, and if it is not stopped, it is out of control.
The Prime Minister said while no one can control the mind of someone hell-bent on murder, the government will do whatever it takes to get a handle on the country's crime problem. Reporting for our news, I'm Vonique Toot.
And with 7 murders in the capital between Thursday and Monday morning, Police Commissioner Ellison Greenslade is calling for tougher bail laws to prevent alleged prolific offenders from reoffending.
The only solution to this is that when they're arrested and charged, when we allow due process and natural justice and we put them before the courts, I believe firmly, as the commissioner, that they should remain incarcerated based upon the egregious crimes that they have committed. They should have their day in court, and the law should take its course.
Greenslade continues to call for a closer examination of the country's bail laws. Back in 2015, the commissioner said police can arrest criminals until they are blue in the face, but as long as they continue to get bail, murders and other violent crimes will continue. Today, he said it is a simple appeal he's making.
That we have to ensure that people that walk around with assault weapons and automatic and semi-automatic pistols and other variations of weapons, that have used those weapons to cause harm to people in our communities, that have in fact murdered people, that have raped people, that have attempted to murder people, we feel they should remain. I'm going to make no apology for saying it. They should remain, read my lips, incarcerated, and they should have their day in court.
His comments come on the heels of what Greenslade described as a very difficult weekend for police. While he admitted that there is a problem, Greenslade says the country is not in crisis.
It is a falsehood. It is a falsehood to tell the Bahamian public and the world at large that the Bahamas is in crisis. That, I'm going to use the word, is nonsense. Every well-meaning citizen in this country is well aware that these young people that are unfortunately dying, and the young people that are the perpetrators, that is the people pulling the trigger of a gun or taking a blade of a knife and putting it into someone, these are people that have fallen through the cracks in our society. We have a problem. Let's not kid ourselves. And that problem is, again, prolific offenders that are in and out of the system, who are not prepared to cease and desist.
Despite the bloody weekend, the commissioner maintains that prolific offenders are responsible for the scourge of crime and that law-abiding citizens and visitors should not be threatened by crime.
We go back to January 1 of this year, leading forward, and we look at the carnage, I think is a fair word to use, in this country, and again predominantly in New Providence. We have continued to pursue these prolific offenders. These are people that are in and out of the system, meaning our court system. But please do not make the mistake in thinking that the people that we are talking about, and I want to offer the greatest respects to their family members and to their friends, are people that are in school, are in church, or doing normal things like you and I. That's not the description placed upon the victims and the assailants that we're talking about.
He adds that if the country continues the way it is going, we will continue to chase our tails. However, drastic measures such as curfews and lockdowns are not the answer.
We're kidding ourselves. And lots of people are going to be very upset because it's a difficult conversation to have. Yes, some drastic things should happen, but the question cannot be about how drastic is the approach by the police. How much more drastic would you wish us to be?
Well, the Prime Minister and Commissioner of Police both spoke out on crime today as officers responded to 2 additional incidents this afternoon. Officer in charge of the Central Detective Unit, Chief Superintendent Clayton Fernander, gave these details.
Sometime around 4:20 p.m. this afternoon, 2 adult male was in a club just here on Ross Corner when a vehicle pulled up. 2 armed men exited that vehicle, entered the club, and there was an exchange of gunshots by 2 other individuals who was in the establishment, who was eventually shot to the body and taken to a hospital. At this time, both victims are being attended to by doctor in serious condition.
Fernandez says police are also investigating a stabbing incident that took place just after 1 p.m. outside of a business establishment on Nassau Street.
There was some information that the victim had died. That is not so. I have my investigators at the hospital as we speak, and the victim is speaking to the officer at this time. So the victim, with respect to that matter, is very much alive and is communicating with the investigators, and we are trying to bring some closure to that. It appears as though it could have been for some domestic problem.
Fernandez says one of the victims from Ross Street was listed by the Commissioner of Police today as a wanted suspect.
What we could say here, one of the victims who was shot, as the Commissioner just completed his press briefing, one of those individuals who was shot was highlighted as one of the suspects wanted for murder. He indicated that if they don't turn themselves in, they will become a target. And this is exactly what is playing out here this afternoon.
Well, the Commissioner's comments come as police investigations continue into the recent spate of murders, including an incident on West Bay Street and another in Yellow Elder Gardens. Vonique Toot reports.
Following a violent weekend, the bloodshed continued this morning after an altercation outside a West Bay Street business left one man dead and another in police custody. Police say the victim was shot during that incident, which happened around 2 o'clock this morning. He was rushed to hospital where he died hours later. Authorities are questioning one suspect in connection with his murder. It comes 6 hours after a man was shot and killed in Yellow Elder Gardens. On the scene last night, family members' grief was evident as they watched their nightmare unfold behind crime scene tape. Assistant Commissioner of Police Stephen Dean says this is what police know so far.
Briefly, what we can tell you that occurred here shortly after 8 p.m., a male was sitting in the front of his residence with two other persons. When two males came, they armed with handguns. They fired and shot him, and they fled on foot.
Relatives' cries grew louder as the man's body was loaded into a hearse.
Y'all listen good to me. I can read the 137. Listen good to me. I can read the 91 Psalms and I know them by heart. Now, I want you to take a picture, because guess what? You don't do nobody nothing.
Dean says police were out in full force last night searching for his killers.
Police have launched an island-wide manhunt for two males who are responsible for shooting death of a male here in Derby Road. We are asking members of the public who might have information regarding this latest shooting to come forward with any information that they might have. I can tell you that all of our officers are out on the road and streets tonight. I'm trying to find these killers.
7 people have been murdered in New Providence since Friday, sparking outrage and renewing calls for officials to curb the country's crime problem. Dean said police will do all they can to catch those responsible.
This is not the only incident that we investigate. We are investigating several incidents over the weekend, and we want to bring these persons to justice.
Reporting for our News, I'm Vonique Toot.
Meantime, several men were charged in the magistrate's court today with recent murders. Giorgio Bain reports.
5 men were brought before the magistrate's court today to answer to charges of murder. Several suspects appeared before Chief Magistrate Joy Ann Ferguson Pratt today, charged with recent murders or attempted murders. 21-year-old Taraj Johnson of 2nd Street, wearing the green shirt, was charged with 1 count of murder and 3 counts of attempted murder. It is alleged that on January 17th, Johnson did, by means of unlawful harm, cause the death of Jamaico Ash. It is also alleged that Johnson did attempt to cause the death of Teron Thompson, Azario Thompson, and Sean Monroe. Johnson was not required to enter a plea and will be served a VBI on the 19th of April. He was remanded to the Bahamas Department of Corrections. Also in court today was 22-year-old Frederico Ramsey of Williams Lane in the Yellow Jacket. It is alleged that on January 18th, Ramsey did, by means of unlawful harm, cause the death of Ricardo Forbes. Ramsey was not required to enter a plea and will be remanded to custody until April 6, when he will be served with a VBI. Meantime, Micah Johnson of King Street, age 26, dressed in the blue and white striped shirt, was also charged with the February 2nd murder of Luis Gustavo. Johnson was not required to enter a plea and will be remanded to Bahamas Department of Corrections until April 18th, when he will be served with a VBI. Then there was 24-year-old Dwight Jones of Ida Street dressed in the yellow and gray shirt, and Francisco Furbert of Ida Street, age 20, dressed in the red plaid shirt. The pair is accused of the February 7th murder of Benjamin Anderson. They were not required to enter a plea and will be remanded to the Bahamas Department of Corrections until April 19th, when they will be served with a VBI. Both men told Chief Magistrate that they were currently being electrically monitored and asked that their trackers be checked to see where they were on the day in question. Reporting for our news, I'm Georgia Bain.
Still to come on our news, the one and only Ocean Club on Paradise Island reopens its doors, and the Montague MP calls boundary cuts in his constituency outrageous. That's coming up when our news returns.